The red lights flashed across the command center of Kepler Station as another explosion shook the massive space structure. Admiral Vextar gripped the metal railing with his clawed hands and watched the battle reports flow across the holographic displays. The numbers were bad and getting worse by the hour. "Sir, we have lost another cruiser squadron," reported Commander Zillineth, her crystal body glowing with stress patterns. "The Saurian fleet is down to 12 ships. The Quartzian forces have only 8 vessels left." Vextar's reptilian face showed no emotion, but inside he felt the cold touch of fear. In his 300 years of military service, he had never seen an enemy like the Zephyrians. They fought like machines, but adapted like living creatures. Their black ships moved through space like hungry predators, consuming everything in their path. "What about the other coalition fleets?" he asked, though he already knew the answer would not be good. The Centaurian Navy lost their flagship an hour ago. The Andromedan Defense Force is retreating to the outer system. The Vegan Republic has only 4 ships left operational. Zillineth paused, her crystalline form dimming. "Sir, we are losing this battle." Through the station's massive windows, Vextar could see the enemy mothership in the distance. The Devourer was a nightmare made real, a planet-sized mass of metal and flesh that had already consumed 14 star systems. Smaller ships emerged from its surface, like insects from a hive, thousands of them spreading across the battlefield. The Coalition had tried everything. Their most powerful energy weapons barely scratched the Zephyrian armor. Their missiles were shot down or absorbed by the enemy's biomechanical defenses. Their best tactical minds had studied the enemy for months and found no weakness to exploit. "Sir, incoming message from the Andromedan fleet," called out Lieutenant Mortex from their communications station. "Admiral Kethver reports that his remaining ships are running low on ammunition. He requests permission to fall back to the secondary defense line." Vextar closed his eyes for a moment. The secondary defense line was their last stand. If they retreated there, they would be giving up the entire Kepler system to the enemy. Millions of civilians lived on the planets below, and there was no time to evacuate them all. "Tell Admiral Kethver to hold his position as long as possible," Vextar ordered. "Every minute we buy saves more lives." Another explosion rocked the station, stronger this time. The artificial gravity flickered for a moment before the backup systems kicked in. Warning alarms began sounding throughout the command center. "Direct hit on Section 7, reported the damage control officer. "We have hull breaches on decks 12 through 15. Emergency force fields are holding, but barely." Vextar looked at the tactical display again. The Coalition forces were arranged in a defensive formation around Kepler Station, but they were being pushed back on all sides. The Zephyrians attacked with perfect coordination, their ships moving like parts of a single organism. Every time the Coalition forces tried a new strategy, the enemy adapted within minutes. "Sir, we are receiving a transmission from an unknown vessel," announced Lieutenant Mortex. "The signal is coming from the edge of the system." "Unknown vessel? All our ships are accounted for." Vextar frowned. "Put it through." The main display flickered and showed the face of a creature Vextar had never seen before. It had pale skin, 2 eyes, and a small mouth. Hair covered the top of its head in an odd brown color. The being wore what looked like a simple blue uniform with strange markings. "Coalition Command, this is Captain Jake Morrison of the exploration vessel Aurora. We have been monitoring your communications and observing the battle. My species would like to offer assistance." The command center fell silent. Several officers exchanged glances of confusion. Zillineth stepped forward, her crystal body pulsing with curiosity. "Unknown Captain, we appreciate your offer, but this is a military engagement against a highly advanced enemy force. Unless your people have significant combat experience, and advanced weapons technology. We cannot risk involving civilian vessels in this battle." The strange being called Jake Morrison smiled, showing white teeth. "Ma'am, my people have plenty of combat experience. We might not have the fanciest technology, but we know how to fight when our backs are against the wall." Vexstar studied the alien's face on the screen. There was something in its eyes, a hardness that spoke of violence and determination. The Admiral had seen that look before in the eyes of warriors who had survived many battles. "Captain Morrison, what is your species called?" Vexstar asked. "We call ourselves humans, Admiral. We come from a planet called Earth in the Sol System. We know we are not part of your coalition, but we have been watching this fight from the edge of your space. These Zephyrian creatures had destroyed too many worlds already." Commander Zillineth accessed her data banks quickly. "Sir, I have limited information on this species. They are listed as a recently discovered race from the Outer Rim territories. The reports describe them as primitive and aggressive, not suitable for galactic civilization." Jake Morrison laughed, a sound that seemed strange to the Coalition officers. "Primitive and aggressive? Well, those reports are not wrong. But sometimes primitive and aggressive is exactly what you need." Another wave of explosions shook the station. The tactical display showed more Coalition ships going dark as the Zephyrian forces pressed their attack. Time was running out. "Captain Morrison, how many ships can your people send?" Vexstar asked, desperation creeping into his voice. "Give us 72 hours, Admiral. We will send what we can." The transmission ended, leaving the command center in silence. Zillineth turned to face Vexstar, her crystal form flickering with uncertainty. "Sir, are we really going to trust our fate to an unknown species that the galaxy considers primitive barbarians?" Vexstar looked at the tactical display one more time. The Coalition forces were down to less than 40 ships. The Devourer continued to spawn new attackers by the hundreds. At their current rate of loss, they had perhaps 18 hours before. Complete defeat. "Commander, do we have any other choice?" he asked quietly. Zillineth followed his gaze to the display, showing their dwindling forces. "No, sir, we do not." "Then we hope these humans are as good at fighting as they claim to be." Vexstar said, "Send an encrypted message to Earth. Tell them we accept their offer of assistance and request immediate military aid." As the message raced through hyperspace toward the distant Sol system, the battle for Kepler Station continued to rage. The Coalition forces fought bravely, but they were slowly losing ground to an enemy that seemed unstoppable in the depths of space. The Devourer pulsed with alien hunger, ready to consume another world. General Lisa Hayes stood in the war room deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, staring at the holographic display that showed the desperate message from the Kepler system. Around her, Earth's top military commanders studied the alien battle reports. With grim faces, 72 hours, muttered Admiral Ben Carter, his weathered hands clasped behind his back. "They want us to cross half the galaxy and fight an enemy we have never seen before in 72 hours. The message says this Zephyrian horde has already destroyed 14 star systems," added Colonel Amy Rodriguez, reading from her tablet. "Their mothership is the size of a planet, and they have millions of smaller attack vessels." General Hayes looked around the room at the assembled officers. These were the men and women who had fought in Earth's bloodiest conflicts from the Resource Wars to the Martian Rebellion. They were tough, experienced, and completely unprepared for interstellar warfare. "What do we know about our potential allies?" she asked. Commander Rick Thompson pulled up another display. "The Coalition consists of 12 different alien species. They have been fighting a defensive war for 8 months and losing badly. Their technology appears more advanced than ours, but they fight like they are afraid to take casualties. Their weapons are mostly energy-based," added Captain Danny Walsh, studying the technical data. Plasma cannons, particle beams, that sort of thing. Very clean, very precise. Their ships are sleek and fast, but lightly armored. Admiral Carter walked over to the display, showing Earth's available forces. We can mobilize the entire home fleet, plus the Mars Defense Squadron and the Outer System Patrol. That gives us roughly 200 ships of various classes. Our ships are built like tanks compared to theirs, observed Colonel Rodriguez. Heavy armor, multiple redundant systems, designed to take a beating and keep fighting. Our weapons are mostly kinetic and explosive-based. General Hayes nodded slowly. Earth's military had developed under the assumption that any space war would be brutal and ugly. Their ships looked crude next to the elegant alien vessels, but they were built to survive in combat conditions that would destroy more fragile designs. What? About troops? She asked. We can deploy 50,000 Marines across the fleet, Rodriguez replied, plus another 20,000 support personnel, all of them trained in zero-gravity combat and hostile environment operations. Thompson stepped forward. Our fighter pilots have been training against AI opponents that adapt in real time. If these aliens have never faced anything like human unpredictability, we might have an advantage there. Admiral Carter turned to face the room. The real question is whether we can get there in time to make a difference. Our fastest ships can reach the Kepler system in 60 hours if we push the hyperspace drives to maximum. That leaves us 12 hours to fight a battle that will determine the fate of an entire sector, Walsh pointed out. No pressure there. General Hayes walked to the center of the room and activated the main communications array. All commands. This is Hayes. Initiate Operation Thunderbolt. I want every available ship loaded and ready for hyperspace jump within 6 hours. This is not a drill. The massive underground facility exploded into activity as thousands of personnel began preparing for humanity's first interstellar war. In shipyards across the solar system, weapons were loaded, armor was checked, and fusion reactors were brought to full power. 60 hours later, the human fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler system. Admiral Carter stood on the bridge of his flagship Vengeance, watching as 200 Earth vessels formed up in battle formation. The ships ranged from massive dreadnoughts bristling with missile launchers to small frigates designed for hit-and-run attacks. Sir, we are receiving a transmission from the Coalition forces, reported Lieutenant Paula Griffin from the communications station. Put it through. The main screen showed Admiral Vextar, his reptilian features tight with stress. Behind him, the command center of Kepler Station showed obvious battle damage. Admiral Carter, I must admit I did not expect so many ships. Your fleet is larger than our current combined forces. Carter looked at the tactical display showing the ongoing battle. The Coalition ships were arranged in a tight defensive formation around the station, while Zephyrian vessels attacked from multiple directions. The alien mothership hung in space like a dark moon, constantly spawning new attackers. Admiral Vextar, we came here to fight. What do you need us to do? The alien commander seemed surprised by the direct question. Admiral, perhaps we should coordinate our strategies first. Study the enemy patterns. Plan our approach carefully. With respect, sir, you have been studying and planning for 8 months while they destroyed 14 star systems. Sometimes you need to stop thinking and start shooting. On the tactical display, the human ships began spreading out into attack formations that looked chaotic compared to the precise Coalition arrangements. Fighter squadrons launched from carrier vessels, while destroyers moved to flanking positions. Admiral Carter, your formation appears random, observed Commander Zelenith over the communication channel. The Zephyrians will exploit any gaps in your lines. Colonel Rodriguez appeared on a secondary screen from her command ship. Ma'am, human military doctrine does not rely on perfect formations. We prefer flexible tactics that adapt to changing battlefield conditions. Commander Thompson's voice came through the speakers as his fighter squadrons approached the enemy perimeter. All pilots, remember your training. These alien ships might be fast, but they have never faced anything like human crazy. Let's show them what Earth pilots can do. The first human fighters engaged Zephyrian interceptors near the outer defense perimeter. The alien ships moved with perfect coordination, but the human pilots flew with an unpredictable aggression that seemed to confuse their opponents. Target their weapon systems first, ordered Captain Walsh from his destroyer. If they cannot shoot back, they cannot hurt us. The human ships opened fire with weapons the Coalition had never seen in action. Nuclear missiles streaked through space, alongside kinetic rounds traveling at significant fractions of light speed. Railguns fired streams of metal projectiles, while fusion torpedoes created miniature suns when they detonated. Admiral Carter, your weapons appear quite primitive, commented Vextar, watching the human attack unfold. The Zephyrians have adapted to energy weapons. Kinetic and explosive attacks might prove ineffective. Carter smiled grimly as he watched a human missile strike a Zephyrian cruiser. Instead of the usual minimal damage they had seen from Coalition weapons, the alien vessel's biomechanical hull cracked and began venting atmosphere. Admiral, sometimes primitive is exactly what you need, he replied. These Zephyrians have spent months adapting to your clean, precise energy weapons. They have never faced good old-fashioned human violence. The battle began to shift as more human ships engaged the enemy. The Zephyrians, accustomed to predictable Coalition tactics, struggled to counter the chaotic but effective human approach. Human ships took damage but kept fighting, their heavy armor allowing them to survive hits that would destroy Coalition vessels. Sir, the enemy is pulling back from Sector 7, reported Griffin. Human forces have broken through their outer perimeter. Colonel Rodriguez's Marines prepared for their first boarding actions against alien vessels. All teams, remember that we do not know what the inside of these ships will be like. Stay flexible, watch each other's backs, and make every shot count. For the first time in months, the Coalition forces saw the Zephyrian advance actually stop. The alien mothership pulsed with angry energy patterns as its supposedly unstoppable forces met an enemy they could not easily predict or counter. Admiral Carter opened a channel to all human ships. All vessels, this is Carter. We came here to fight, and that is exactly what we are going to do. These aliens thought they could consume this galaxy without opposition. Time to show them they were wrong. The real battle was just beginning. Commander Rick Thompson gripped the controls of his fighter as enemy fire streaked past his cockpit. Around him, his squadron of 20 human pilots dove through a formation of Zephyrian interceptors, like angry hornets attacking a beehive. Red? Leader, this is Red 5, called out Lieutenant Steve Parker over the radio. I'm out of missiles, but I still have fuel. Permission to ram that big, ugly cruiser? Thompson watched as Parker's damaged fighter aimed straight for a Zephyrian vessel. This was exactly the kind of tactic that made human pilots different from everyone else in the galaxy. Coalition pilots would never consider using their ship as a weapon. Permission granted, Red 5. Make it count. Parker's fighter slammed into the alien cruiser's weapon array at full speed. The explosion tore a massive hole in the enemy ship's hull, causing it to spin out of control and crash into 2 other Zephyrian vessels. Holy cow, did you see that? Shouted Lieutenant Maria Santos from Red 3. These bugs don't know what to do when we get crazy on them. The Zephyrian forces had been dominating space combat for months because they fought with perfect coordination and adapted to enemy tactics quickly. But human pilots did not follow any logical pattern. They took risks that seemed suicidal, made split-second decisions that defied military logic. and turned their own ships into weapons when conventional attacks failed. Meanwhile, Colonel Amy Rodriguez watched the boarding operation unfold from her command ship. Her Marines had successfully breached 3 Zephyrian vessels using explosive charges to blow holes in their hulls. The aliens had never faced enemies who would intentionally decompress entire sections of a ship to gain entry. Alpha Team, this is Rodriguez. What's your status inside the enemy vessel? Sergeant Tony Phillips responded from inside the alien ship. Ma'am, these corridors are weird. Everything is too big and too dark. The gravity is wrong, and there's some kind of slime on the walls. But we're moving toward what looks like their engine room. Any enemy contact? Plenty, ma'am. These Zephyrian things are tough, but they don't seem to know how to fight in close quarters. They're used to ship-to-ship combat, not Marines with shotguns kicking down their doors. The human Marines carried weapons that would have horrified Coalition forces. Shotguns loaded with explosive rounds, flamethrowers for clearing, corridors, and grenades that could blow apart bulkheads. They fought with a brutality that the refined alien species found disturbing but effective. On the bridge of the Vengeance, Admiral Carter studied the tactical display as more human ships joined the battle. Captain Danny Walsh had positioned his destroyer squadron to attack Zephyrian vessels with kinetic weapons that punched through their biomechanical armor like bullets through paper. Sir, the enemy mothership is launching more attack craft, reported Lieutenant Griffin. Estimated 1,200 new contacts emerging from the Devourer. Carter nodded calmly. Signal all ships to implement Protocol 7. Protocol 7 was something the Coalition had never seen before. Instead of falling back or trying to maintain formation, the human ships scattered in all directions and began attacking individual targets with maximum aggression. Each captain was free to choose his own targets and tactics without waiting for orders from higher command. The Zephyrian forces, programmed to respond to coordinated fleet actions, found themselves facing dozens of independent attacks happening simultaneously. Their hive mind coordination began to break down as they tried to adapt to too many different human tactics at once. Captain Walsh's destroyer Hammer fired its main railgun at a Zephyrian heavy cruiser. The tungsten projectile, accelerated to 20% of light speed, punched completely through the alien vessel and continued on to strike another ship behind it. Target destroyed, reported his weapons officer. Moving to the next one, Walsh's ship took return fire from 3 different directions, but its heavy armor absorbed the energy blasts without critical damage. This was another advantage human ships had over Coalition vessels. They were built to take punishment and keep fighting even when badly damaged. Lieutenant Colonel Nina Brooks commanded a special operations team aboard the fast cruiser Shadow. Her mission was different from the standard Marine boarding actions. She was trying to hack into Zephyrian communication networks and disrupt their coordination. Brooks to Admiral Carter, she called over a secure channel. We've managed to access their communication frequency. Requesting permission to implement psychological warfare protocols. What do you have in mind, Colonel? Sir, these aliens communicate through some kind of shared consciousness network. If we can inject the right kind of interference into their system, we might be able to confuse or disorient them. Carter considered this for a moment. Psychological warfare against aliens was completely untested, but the humans were already breaking every rule of galactic combat anyway. Do it. Brooks activated her equipment and began broadcasting into the Zephyrian network. The signals included recordings of human war cries, explosions, and the most violent music Earth had ever produced. Heavy metal and death metal pounded through the alien communication channels at maximum volume. The effect was immediate and dramatic. Zephyrian ships began moving erratically as their pilots struggled to filter out the chaotic human noise from their shared consciousness. Some vessels actually collided with each other as their coordination completely broke down. Admiral Vexstar to Admiral Carter came a transmission from Kepler Station. What are your people doing to the enemy? Their attack patterns have become completely random. We're introducing them to human culture, Admiral, Carter replied with a grim smile. Turns out they don't appreciate our music. Commander Thompson's fighter squadron took advantage of the confusion to strike at larger targets. Human pilots dove through formations of disoriented Zephyrian ships, firing missiles and guns at point-blank range before spinning away to attack the next target. This is like shooting fish in a barrel, called out Lieutenant Santos as she destroyed her fifth enemy fighter. These bugs can't handle a little chaos. But the humans were paying a price for their aggressive tactics. Damage reports flooded in from across the fleet as human ships absorbed punishment that would have sent coalition forces into full retreat. The destroyer, Iron Fist, lost its main engine and was fighting with backup power. The cruiser Liberty had taken so much hull damage that entire sections were sealed off, but its crew kept firing. The carrier Washington was down to half its fighter complement, but the remaining pilots continued their relentless attacks. Sir, we're losing ships, reported Griffin. Current casualties stand at 15% of the fleet. Carter looked at the tactical display. The coalition forces had been fighting for 8 months and barely taken any casualties, but they had also barely inflicted any damage on the enemy. In just 4 hours, the humans had destroyed more Zephyrian vessels than the coalition had managed. In the entire war, signal all ships, Carter ordered. Continue the attack. We came here to fight, and we're going to keep fighting until this is over. On Kepler Station, Admiral Vexstar watched the human assault with a mixture of admiration and horror. These primitive aliens were fighting with a savagery that would have been considered barbaric by galactic standards, but they were winning. Commander Zelenev, have you ever seen anything like this? He asked. The crystalline officer's body flickered with confused patterns. No, sir. These humans fight like they have nothing to lose. They use their own ships as weapons and seem to enjoy taking risks that should be suicidal. Perhaps that is exactly what we needed, Vexstar said quietly. An enemy the Zephyrians cannot understand or predict. The battle was far from over, but for the first time in months, the defenders of Kepler Station had hope. Major Kevin Brooks pressed his back against the wall of the Zephyrian command ship as alien weapons fire burned the air where he had been standing a second before. His Marine squad was pinned down in a corridor that looked more like the inside of a living creature than a normal spaceship. Corporal Johnson, how many grenades do you have left? He called over the sound of battle. 3 frags and 2 thermite charges, sir, replied Corporal Matt Johnson from behind a piece of twisted metal that served as cover. Use the thermite on that wall. We need to get through to the next section before they bring up reinforcements. The thermite charges burned through the biomechanical wall with intense white heat, creating a hole large enough for the Marines to crawl through. Brooks went first, his assault rifle ready as he entered what appeared to be some kind of control room filled with pulsing organic computers. This place gives me the creeps, muttered Private Lisa Chun as she followed him through the hole. Everything is alive and slimy. The Zephyrian defenders were unlike anything in the Coalition databases. They were part machine and part creature, with metal limbs grafted onto organic bodies. They moved with perfect coordination, but seemed confused by the chaotic human tactics. Contact front, shouted Sergeant Mike Davis as more enemies appeared. These things are tough. My rifle barely scratches them. Brooks pulled out his sidearm and fired explosive rounds into the nearest Zephyrian. The creature's biomechanical armor cracked and leaked strange fluids, but it kept fighting until Davis hit it with a shotgun blast that finally put it down. Meanwhile, Captain Julie Anderson crept through the ventilation system of another enemy vessel. Her stealth team had managed to plant nuclear charges in 3 critical locations. but they needed to reach the ship's power core to complete their mission. "Anderson to base," she whispered into her radio. "We're approaching the target. Heavy resistance, but nothing we can't handle." Her team consisted of only 6 people, but they had already disabled 2 Zephyrian ships from the inside. The aliens had never faced enemies who would crawl through their own ventilation systems like rats in the walls. "Captain, I'm reading massive energy signatures ahead," reported Lieutenant Carl Murphy. "This has to be their main reactor." Anderson looked through a grate into a chamber the size of a football stadium. The Zephyrian power core was a massive organic structure that pulsed with dark energy. Hundreds of cables and tubes connected it to the rest of the ship like arteries in a body. "That's our target," she said quietly. "Plant the charges and get out. We have 10 minutes before detonation." Back in the main battle, Admiral Carter watched as his fleet pressed the attack against increasingly desperate Zephyrian forces. Enemy was adapting to human tactics, but not fast enough to counter the constant stream of new strategies his captains were inventing. "Sir, the coalition forces are requesting permission to join the assault," reported Lieutenant Griffin. Carter looked at the tactical display. Admiral Vextar's ships had been holding a defensive position around Kepler Station, but the human attack had created gaps in the Zephyrian lines that could be exploited. "Tell Admiral Vextar his forces are cleared to advance, but warn him that we fight differently than he's used to." The coalition ships moved forward cautiously, still maintaining their precise formations. But now they were supported by human vessels that acted as mobile shields, absorbing enemy fire while the more fragile alien ships attacked from safer positions. "This is Admiral Vextar to all coalition vessels," came the transmission. "Follow the human lead. Engage targets of opportunity." Commander Zelenoff found herself commanding a mixed squadron of coalition and human ships for the first time. The experience was both terrifying and inspiring as she watched human captains take risks that no sane military officer would consider. "Human vessel Defiance, you are flying directly into enemy crossfire," she warned Captain Pete Wilson. "Ma'am, that's the whole point," Wilson replied calmly as his ship absorbed hits from 6 different directions. "If they're shooting at me, they're not shooting at you." Wilson's ship was heavily damaged, but still fighting as it closed with a Zephyrian cruiser. At the last moment, he fired all his remaining missiles at point-blank range before his ship was destroyed by return fire. The explosion took out the enemy cruiser and damaged 2 other vessels. The humans sacrificed themselves to protect others, Zelenoff observed with wonder. Their tactical doctrine accepts casualties that we would consider unacceptable. The battle reached a turning point when Major Brooks's team successfully destroyed the command node of their target vessel. The Zephyrian ship went dark and began drifting, its biomechanical systems failing without central control. "Brooks to all Marines," he transmitted. "The control center is destroyed. These things are vulnerable if you can reach their brain." This information spread quickly through the human forces. Marine teams redoubled their efforts to board enemy ships and target their command systems. The Zephyrians, accustomed to external attacks, were not prepared for enemies who would fight through their own ships to destroy them from within. Commander Thompson's remaining fighters took advantage of the confusion to strike at the outer defenses of the Devourer itself. The massive mothership had been launching attack craft constantly, but human pilots were getting close enough to target its weapon systems. "Red leader to all fighters," Thompson transmitted. "The big ship is our real target. Everything else is just practice." His squadron dove toward the Devourer's surface, dodging defensive fire from weapons the size of city blocks. The mothership's biomechanical hull was scarred and pitted from previous battles, but it showed no signs of serious damage. "Sir, our weapons aren't making much of a dent," reported Lieutenant Santos. "This thing is too big and too well armored." Thompson studied the massive structure ahead of them. The Devourer was more than just a ship. It was like a living planet covered in weapons and launch bays. But even planets had weak points. "All fighters, target the launch bays," he ordered. "If we can't destroy it, maybe we can stop it from launching more ships." The human fighters attacked the Devourer's surface with everything they had. Missiles and gunfire focused on the openings where enemy craft emerged, causing explosions deep inside the mothership's structure. For the first time since the battle began, the rate of new Zephyrian ships entering the fight began to slow down. Captain Anderson's team completed their mission and barely escaped as their target ship exploded from within. The nuclear detonation tore the vessel apart and sent debris flying into nearby Zephyrian formations. "Another one down," she reported. "These things can dish it out, but they sure don't like it when we fight back." On Kepler Station, Admiral Vex Star could hardly believe what he was seeing. The tide of battle was actually turning. The Zephyrian forces that had seemed unstoppable were now retreating from sectors they had controlled for months. "Sir, long-range sensors show the enemy is pulling ships back from other systems," reported an officer. "They're concentrating everything around the Devourer." Vex Star nodded grimly. The Zephyrians were making their final stand. Everything would be decided in the next few hours. Admiral Carter received the same reports and smiled coldly. "Signal all ships," he ordered. "Prepare for final assault. It's time to take that mothership down." The real battle was about to begin. Admiral Ben Carter stood on the bridge of the Vengeance as his fleet prepared for the most dangerous mission in human history. Through the main view screen, the Devourer filled their vision like a dark planet covered in weapons and launch bays. The massive mothership pulsed with alien energy as it fed on the remains of a destroyed star system. "Final count, Admiral," reported Lieutenant Griffin. 47 ships operational, down from our original 200. Marine forces at 60% strength. Carter nodded grimly. The human fleet had paid a heavy price to reach this point, but they had accomplished something the Coalition thought impossible. The Zephyrian horde was retreating on all fronts, pulling their forces back to defend their mothership. "Signal all ships," Carter ordered. "This is what we came here to do." Every man and woman in this fleet knew the risks when we left Earth. Today, we finish this. Colonel Amy Rodriguez checked her equipment one final time as her transport ship approached the Devourer's surface. Around her, 10,000 Marines prepared for the largest boarding action in human military history. They carried enough explosives to level a small city and the determination to use every bit of it. "Listen up," she told her troops over the intercom. "This thing is bigger than anything we have ever seen. We don't know what we'll find inside, but we know what we have to do. Find the control center, plant the charges, and make sure this monster never threatens another world." The transport ships were crude and ugly compared to Coalition vessels, but they were built to survive impacts that would destroy more elegant designs. They slammed into the Devourer's hull at high speed, using explosive charges to blast entry holes through the biomechanical armor. "Breach successful," reported Major Brooks as his team poured through the smoking hole into the alien structure. "We're inside, but this place is like a maze. Corridors going in every direction." The interior of the Devourer was a nightmare of organic technology and twisted metal. The walls pulsed like living tissue, and strange lights flickered through. Tubes filled with unknown fluids. The gravity was wrong, pulling in different directions as they moved deeper into the structure. "Stay together," Rodriguez ordered as she led her command team through a corridor wide enough to fly a ship through. "Mark your path so we can find our way back. And remember, we have 6 hours to complete this mission." Meanwhile, Commander Rick Thompson led his remaining fighters in a desperate attack on the Devourer's defensive weapons. The mothership's surface was covered in gun batteries the size of skyscrapers. each one capable of destroying a human ship with a single shot. "Red leader to all fighters," he transmitted. "Keep those guns busy. Our people need time to get inside and do their job." Thompson's squadron consisted of only 12 ships, all that remained of his original 50 fighters. They attacked the massive weapons with suicidal courage, flying so close to the Devourer's surface that they could see details in its biomechanical armor. "Red 3 is hit," called out Lieutenant Santos as her fighter spun out of control. "Engines gone. I'm going to ram that gun battery." Santos aimed her damaged ship at the base of a massive weapon and increased power to maximum. Her fighter slammed into the alien structure and exploded, destroying the gun battery and clearing a path for other human vessels. Inside the Devourer, Captain Jake Morrison led a small team of specialists toward what their scanners indicated was the central processing core. The man who had first contacted the Coalition now found himself deep in the heart of the enemy mothership, carrying enough nuclear explosives to crack a moon. "Captain, these readings are off the charts," reported Sergeant Tony Phillips, their technical expert. "Whatever is at the center of this thing, it's putting out more energy than a small star." Morrison checked his equipment as they moved through corridors that seemed to shift and change around them. The Devourer was not just a ship. It was a living creature of immense size and intelligence. They were walking through the body of something that had consumed entire worlds. "Keep moving," he ordered. "Whatever's down there, it's what we came to find." Back on the surface, Colonel Rodriguez's forces had split into dozens of smaller teams, each targeting different sections of the mothership's internal structure. The Marines fought running battles against Zephyrian defenders who seemed to pour out of the walls themselves. "Rodriguez to all teams," she transmitted. "Plant your charges and fall back to extraction points. We have 4 hours left." Corporal Maria Santos led her squad through a section that looked like the inside of a giant computer. Organic processors. The size of buildings pulsed with data, while strange creatures tended to their functions like living maintenance robots. "This place is giving me nightmares," muttered Private Chun as they placed explosive charges around critical-looking components. "How do you kill something that's already dead?" "Same way you kill anything else," Santos replied, arming another nuclear device. "You hit it hard enough and in the right place." The Zephyrian defenders were different inside their mothership. They moved faster and fought with more intelligence than their counterparts in space. Some of them were giants the size of tanks, while others were small and quick like deadly spiders. Major Kevin Brooks found himself in a chamber that seemed to serve as some kind of nursery. Thousands of new Zephyrian warriors were growing in pods that lined the walls like eggs. Each pod contained a creature in various stages of development, from tiny larvae to fully formed soldiers. "Brooks to Rodriguez," he transmitted. "I found where they make new troops. Requesting permission to use tactical nuclear devices." "Do it." Rodriguez replied immediately. "Burn the whole section." Brooks and his team placed their most powerful explosives throughout the nursery chamber. When they detonated, they would destroy the Zephyrian ability to create new warriors and seriously damage the mothership's structure. Meanwhile, Thompson's fighters continued their attack on the Devourer's weapon systems. The massive ship was slowly turning to bring more guns to bear on the human fleet, but the process was taking time due to its enormous size. "Admiral Carter, this is Thompson," he transmitted. "We're running low on ships and ammunition, but we're keeping their big guns busy. How are the Marines doing?" "Rodriguez reports good progress," Carter replied from the Vengeance. "They need 2 more hours to reach the core and plant the final charges." Thompson looked at his tactical display. His squadron was down to 8 fighters, all of them damaged and running low on fuel. But they had to keep fighting to give the Marines time to complete their mission. "All fighters, continue the attack," he ordered. We hold this position no matter what. Deep inside the Devourer, Morrison's team finally reached their target. The central processing core was a chamber the size of a stadium, filled with a massive biomechanical brain that pulsed with dark energy. Cables and tubes connected it to every part of the mothership, like a nervous system. "This is it," Morrison said quietly. "This thing controls the entire horde." Phillips scanned the structure with his instruments. "Captain, this entity is not just running the ship. It's thinking. It's aware of us being here." As if responding to his words, the chamber began to change. The walls started closing in, while defense systems activated throughout the area. The Zephyrian collective consciousness had realized the threat and was trying to protect itself. "Plant the charges now," Morrison ordered. "We are running out of time." A final phase of the mission was about to begin. Captain Jake Morrison faced the massive, biomechanical brain at the heart of the Devourer as the chamber walls continued to close around his team. The central consciousness of the Zephyrian horde pulsed with alien intelligence. It's countless. Cables and tubes carrying information from across the galaxy. "Phillips, how long do you need to set up the charges?" Morrison asked as Zephyrian defenders poured into the chamber from hidden passages. 5 minutes, Captain," replied Sergeant Tony Phillips, working frantically with the nuclear devices. "But these things are adapting faster than I expected. The timer systems keep getting interfered with." Corporal Maria Santos fired her rifle at the approaching enemies, while Private Lisa Chun threw grenades to slow their advance. The Zephyrian creatures in this central chamber were different from the others, more intelligent and deadly. They moved with purpose instead of the mechanical coordination they had seen before. "Captain, this brain thing is talking to me," Phillips said suddenly, his face pale. "I can hear it in my head. It wants to know why we keep fighting when we know we cannot win." Morrison looked at the massive organic computer that controlled millions of ships across dozens of star systems. The entity had consumed entire civilizations and turned them into fuel for its endless hunger. It could not understand why humans would sacrifice themselves for strangers. "Tell it that's what makes us human," Morrison said, arming his own explosive device. "We fight for people we have never met because it's the right thing to do." Outside the chamber, Colonel Amy Rodriguez led her remaining Marines in a fighting retreat toward the extraction points. Her forces had successfully planted charges throughout the mothership, but many teams would not make it out alive. "All units, this is Rodriguez," she transmitted. "Detonate charges in 30 minutes. Anyone still inside after that is staying forever." Major Kevin Brooks and his squad were trapped in a corridor that had sealed itself around them. Biomechanical walls grew like cancer, trying to digest the human intruders. Brooks armed his remaining explosives and smiled grimly. "Brooks, to base," he called over the radio. "Tell my wife I said goodbye. We're going to make sure this section goes down with the ship." His team's sacrifice would destroy the Devourer's ability to repair itself, ensuring that the damage from other explosions could not be healed. Brooks thought about his family back on Earth as he pressed the detonator. Meanwhile, Commander Rick Thompson's fighter squadron made their final attack on the Devourer's main weapons. His remaining 6 ships were all damaged and running on fumes, but they had kept the mothership's defenses busy long enough for the Marines to complete their mission. "Red Leader to Admiral Carter," Thompson transmitted. "Mission accomplished. The Marines have planted their charges. Recommend all ships withdraw to safe distance." Admiral Carter watched from the bridge of the Vengeance as his surviving ships pulled back from the massive alien structure. The human fleet was down to less than 30 operational vessels, but they had achieved something the Coalition thought impossible. "Signal the Coalition forces," Carter ordered. "All ships retreat to minimum safe distance. The fireworks are about to begin." Inside the Devourer's core, Morrison's team made their final stand against the Zephyrian collective consciousness. The alien entity had realized that the humans intended to destroy themselves along with their target, a concept it could not process or understand. "Why do you choose death when I offer you knowledge of the universe?" The voice echoed in their minds. "Your species could join with us and live forever." Morrison placed his hand on the final detonator as his team fought to hold their position. Around them, the chamber filled with Zephyrian defenders trying desperately to stop the humans from completing their mission. "Because some things are more important than living forever," Morrison replied. "Like making sure monsters like you never hurt anyone again." Phillips finished programming the nuclear charges with shaking hands. "Devices are armed and synchronized. Captain, when these go off, they'll trigger a cascade reaction throughout the entire mothership." Santos and Chun fell back to Morrison's position as more enemies pressed their attack. The two women had fought their way across half the galaxy and through the bowels of an alien nightmare. Now they would make their final stand in the heart of darkness itself. "It's been an honor serving with you all," Morrison said as he prepared to activate the detonator. "See you on the other side." The nuclear explosions began deep in the Devourer's core and spread outward like a chain of supernovas. The mothership's biomechanical structure, designed to consume and convert matter, turned that same process against itself. Each explosion fed the next until the entire massive vessel was tearing itself apart from within. On Kepler Station, Admiral Vexstar watched in amazement as the planet-sized Devourer began to collapse. Explosions raced across its surface like wildfire, while secondary detonations erupted from its interior. The mothership that had terrorized the galaxy for months was dying. "Sir, we're detecting massive gravitational fluctuations," reported Commander Zillineth. "The Devourer's destruction is creating a localized space-time distortion." The dying mothership pulled Zephyrian vessels toward it like a black hole, destroying thousands of enemy ships that could not escape its gravitational pull. The hive mind that had coordinated the invasion collapsed as its central brain was consumed by nuclear fire. Admiral Carter ordered his surviving ships to retreat even further as the Devourer's death created shockwaves that could be felt across the entire star system. The massive explosion was visible from planets dozens of light years away. "Sir, we're receiving scattered transmissions from Zephyrian forces throughout the sector," reported Lieutenant Griffin. "Their coordination is completely broken. Many ships are retreating into deep space. Without their mothership and central intelligence, the Zephyrian horde fragmented into individual vessels that fled in all directions." The invasion that had consumed 14 star systems was over, stopped by humans who were willing to sacrifice everything for victory. In the aftermath, the Coalition fleet moved through the debris field that had once been the most dangerous threat in the galaxy. Human ships picked up survivors from both sides, treating wounded enemies alongside their own people. "Admiral Carter, this is Admiral Vexstar," came a transmission from Kepler Station. "On behalf of the Galactic Defense Coalition, I want to thank your people for their sacrifice. Humanity has saved us all." Carter looked at the casualty reports, scrolling across his screens. Over half his fleet was gone, including some of the finest officers Earth had ever produced. But they had achieved their mission and proven that humans could stand against the darkness. "Admiral, we came here to fight and we did our job," Carter replied. "But the real heroes are the ones who won't be going home." The surviving human ships began their long journey back to Earth, carrying with them the knowledge that humanity had earned its place among the stars. The galaxy would remember the day when primitive barbarians from a small blue planet proved that courage and determination could overcome any enemy. The Coalition offered humanity full membership and a place of honor in galactic civilization. But they also understood that these humans, who fought with such savage determination, would forever be both valued allies and feared warriors among the stars. The battle was over, but the legend of human courage would echo through the galaxy for generations to come.